Get lost with your blind husband. That's what my stepmother hissed outside the courthouse, while my dad stared at his phone like I was a wrong number. Tell me this. If your own family pushed you into a marriage with a beggar by the bridge, would you go or would you run? I didn't run. I took his hand. And that's the moment my life split wide open. My name is Harper. I grew up on the east side of Houston, where the summers stick to your skin and the bills stick to the fridge, and for a long time I thought pain was just the tax you pay for being alive. My mom braided my hair in the mornings and taught me to bake on Sundays, said butter and patience could fix most things if you let them. Cancer didn't listen. I was 16 when she slipped away, and the house went quiet, in the kind of way where even the air stops trying. My dad sank into a couch groove with a beer, the TV got louder, and the only thing you could hear me say was sorry. Then came Chloe. Younger than my father, perfume that hit you before her shoes did smile that never touched her eyes. In front of my dad, she was pot roast, and please, honey, behind his back she was vinegar. And lists clean, the kitchen scrub, the bathroom fold, everything again, because she could smell laziness, her words not mine. Money my dad left for groceries and school supplies evaporated into handbags. And when my period came, she tossed me a roll of paper towels and said, "Figure it out." Do you think that's fair? Because the day I bled through my jeans in algebra, I walked out holding my backpack behind me while the class whispered. And yeah, that happened. I had dreams anyway, stubborn ones, the kind that don't die just because you're hungry. Doctor, that was one, a real white coat and long nights, and the chance to help someone the way I couldn't help my mom. And a bakery, warm light, a bell on the door, the smell of cinnamon saying, "You're home now." So I lived at the library after school, and I baked after midnight, when Chloe finally slept, and every afternoon I crossed the same old bridge over a dry creek bed where a new face started to appear. He sat with his back against the rail cup on the concrete white cane at his knee, sunglasses quiet as a held breath, and he didn't beg so much as exist. One day after Chloe shredded my journal page by page like it owed her money, I couldn't make it past him. I just stopped, and he said, "You okay?" like he already knew the answer. His voice was warm, not pitying, so I sat on the curb and gave him pieces of my life like loose change, my mother, the new wife, the way a house can make you invisible. He listened, really listened, then said, "Hard doesn't mean hopeless," and for some reason I believed him. You know what I mean? We became a routine 5 minutes, when I could spare it 30 minutes, when I couldn't, me with a bruised heart, and him with a tin cup that never sounded as empty as it looked. I'd sneak him sandwiches when I could, an apple, a few cookies from secret midnight batches. He said thank you, like I'd handed him sunlight. He asked about my dreams and didn't laugh, said the world needs more people who heal and feed, called them beautiful. And nobody had ever used that word for anything that belonged to me. Chloe noticed. Of course she did. That woman could smell joy like a bloodhound. She saw us talking at the bridge, filed it away, kept sweet for a while. Then came the performance. One Saturday, with my dad home and her hand resting on the curve of a very wanted pregnancy, she said, "We've been thinking about your future." And empty spaces opened up in my stomach, because I knew whatever came next would hurt. College is unrealistic, your grades are slipping, money is tight, all those reasonable words with a mean little smile. And then she said the sentence she'd been feeding since she saw me at that bridge. "You should marry that blind man, he needs someone to take care of him, and you need a place to go." My dad nodded like a dashboard bobblehead. "Courthouse next Friday or pack your bag tonight." Pattern interrupt. How quick can a heart drop and still keep beating? I said no, then I said all the things you say when you're drowning, and someone tosses you an anchor, but the math refused to bend. If I refused, I'd be homeless before dark. If I agreed, I'd be married to a man with nothing but quiet kindness, and kindness won, because sometimes that's all you've got left that isn't broken. I pulled my mother's dress from the back of the closet because it was all I had that said ceremony, and I stood in front of a judge with a stranger whose hand felt steady while my father checked sports scores and Chloe smiled like a cat in a canary shop. The words were quick signatures, quicker, and somewhere between "I do" and "you're done." I stopped feeling my feet. We stepped outside into that heavy Houston heat, and Chloe leaned in. "You're out tonight." Her breath sugar and gasoline, and my dad didn't even turn around. That's when Jason squeezed my hand and said, "We're not staying in Houston." I looked at him with all the confusion you can fit in a human face. He said, "A ride is waiting." We turned the corner, and there it was, a black car that didn't belong to my side of town. A driver in a suit holding the door saying, "Good afternoon, sir." "Sir." Jason lifted his sunglasses, met my eyes, square on brown and clear, then tugged at the back of his head and slid out a slim black blindfold I hadn't known existed, dropped the white cane in a trash can, like shedding a skin, took both my hands and said, "Welcome to your new life, baby. Breathe." Did I just marry a liar or a miracle? We slid into that car, leather softer than any bed I'd ever slept on, and the driver said, "Private terminal, sir," like it was Tuesday, and I watched Houston slide past the window, while the person next to me turned into a different version of himself with every mile. He told me the pieces he'd kept hidden. New York kid father, who built a fortune one hard year at a time, schools with Latin mottos, dates where he felt like a walking ATM, prayers answered with prenups. He couldn't tell who loved him and who loved the life his last name bought. So he left and put on a disguise, a blindfold under dark glasses, a quiet corner by a bridge, and waited to see who would stop and speak to the man and not the money. I asked him why he said yes to Chloe and my father. Why the courthouse? Why me? And he said, because it gave you a door you could walk through on your own feet, because he cared, because he believed the girl who shared her lunch when she barely had any would build a life if she had a fair shot. He said this marriage can be what you want, stay, and we build slowly, end it, and I'll make sure you have a runway, you are not trapped anymore. He didn't touch me without asking, didn't make promises with glitter on them. He just handed me control like it belonged to me, which it did. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. New York hums in your bones. We stepped off a small jet into a world I'd only seen in movies, drove past steel and glass, and people who walk like they mean it through a gate where the guard knew Jason by name, up a drive toward a house that could have swallowed my whole street. The front doors opened before the car stopped, and a woman ran toward us with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face, wrapped Jason up, then turned to me and said, "Harper, welcome home," like she'd been saving that sentence for months. Grace, his mom, held me while I cried, the kind of sobs that start in the childhood you never got to have. Michael, his dad, shook my hand and looked at me like I was already family. Amelia, his sister, bounced down the stairs with a grin that said, "You and me, let's start over." The next morning, Grace brought breakfast on a tray and said, "If you want to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor. We'll finish your credits. We'll hire a tutor. We'll find your path. Money is not your problem anymore." She said it like gravity, calm and sure, and something steady finally grew bones inside me. I studied, I slept. I learned what it felt like to wake up without a knot in my throat. Jason and I took it slow on purpose, friends first, trust before romance. And when I said stay one night, it wasn't fear or obligation, it was choice. The rebuild wasn't glamorous. It was sweat and flashcards and late buses and 1,000 tiny decisions to keep going. I passed my GED, enrolled in a pre-med program, said yes to labs and no to quitting. And the kitchen in that house became my safe place in the late afternoons, bread rising like hope cookies cooling on racks, while Amelia stole the ugly ones and called them perfect anyway. Jason never rushed me, never dangled riches like a leash. He just showed up. He made tea he believed out loud. Time moved, and I moved with it. I got into Columbia pre-med, then med school, spent nights in anatomy labs and days in clinics where I learned that someone's whole story can live inside a blood pressure reading if you know how to listen. Jason's parents were at every little milestone like it was a parade, my name on a white coat, my first assist in surgery, the first time a patient said thank you, and I nearly cried in the supply closet. Somewhere in there, I opened a small bakery near the hospital. Warm light, real butter, a bell on the door, exactly like the one I dreamed. And on Saturdays, I taught kids from the neighborhood how to fold dough and talk about their futures without whispering. Then the past knocked at the front door of the present, literally. One evening I walked into our living room, and there sat my father and Chloe, smaller than my memory, older, worn thin by years they apparently didn't enjoy. They said, "We're sorry, we want to make amends," and they said it right after a news segment showed my face at a charity gala. Funny how apologies find your address when your life looks expensive. Do you think that's fair? I forgave them because I wanted my hands free, not because I wanted them at my table. I said, the door to my life stays closed, no visits, no surprise calls, no meeting my kids. Not now, not later. My father cried, Chloe stared at the rug, and I walked them out calmly, because calm is a power I earned. Later, Jason and I set up anonymous trust funds for my half-siblings, money they can touch at 18, and only they can touch in case they need a way out I didn't have. You can call it weakness or grace, I call it insurance for children who didn't get to choose their parents. If it were you, what would you have done? Then came the day that proved to me karma doesn't keep score, but life loves a full circle. I was finishing rounds when a colleague grabbed me, critical patient in the ER. Severe complications from diabetes, name is Chloe Mitchell Anderson. And the hallway got quiet inside my ears. I walked into the room and there she was, smaller than my rage, remembered skin, paper, pale monitors, telling truths her body couldn't hide anymore. My father sat with his head in his hands, looked up and saw me in a white coat, and said Harper like a question and a prayer. And I said, I'm Dr. Turner, I'll be leading her care. What would you have done, really? I did my job. Orders written tight. Drip set electrolytes, corrected labs sent in a rhythm that lives in my bones, now my team moving like a well-rehearsed chorus, because that's how we do it. And through the night, we pulled her back from the ledge. Dawn found her stabilized, not safe, but pointed in the right direction. My father thanked me with tears that belonged to a man I didn't know, and I told him the truth. I didn't save her for you or for her, I saved her because I'm a doctor, and because I will not become what hurt me. He nodded like someone learning a new language, asked if we could talk, admitted things. He should have said years ago, I chose Chloe over you. Because I was weak, I told myself lies because the truth would have demanded action, and he asked for a second chance. I gave him forgiveness again, I did not give him access, boundaries. Aren't punishment, they're oxygen. When Chloe woke up, she stared at me like she'd seen a ghost and whispered, You saved me, I said. I did my job, she said. I'm sorry, and for once it sounded like a line she didn't rehearse. I told her, be better to your kids than you were to me. Then I transferred her care to a colleague because I could save her life without stitching myself into it. There's a difference, and I respect it. The years since have been full in a way that doesn't need bragging. It just sits on your chest like a warm cat. I split my time between the hospital and the bakery. I come home to a man who still looks at me like the courthouse steps. We raise 2 kids who know they are loved out loud. Grace and Michael never miss a school play or a scrimmage. Amelia calls me for nothing and everything. And sometimes, on quiet nights, I bake my mother's chocolate chip cookies with my daughter, and tell stories about a woman whose hands smelled like vanilla and hope. We give quietly to shelters and youth programs. We write checks without selfies. We show up because I remember looking for a face that cared. People ask me if I believe in karma. I don't pretend the universe runs a neat ledger, but I do believe this when you fight to stay kind, without letting yourself be a doormat. When you forgive to release your own hands, but keep your boundaries to protect your peace when you use power to lift rather than push. Life tends to bend toward better. Not perfect, better. So tell me, would you have saved Chloe? Would you forgive a father who looked away when you needed him most? Or would you close the door and lock it tight? Which one feels like freedom to you? Would you set up trust funds for half-siblings you've never tucked in? Or would you draw the line and say, not my job? Do you think forgiving without reconciling is real forgiveness or just polite distance? Be honest with me in the comments, not the answer that sounds good, the answer that feels true. If this story touched something soft or raw, do a small thing that helps it reach the person who needs it next. Hit like so the algorithm doesn't bury it. Subscribe and ring the bell. If you want more true stories with hard edges and real hope, share it with someone who's walking through their own version of my bridge. And tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing the map light up. Most of all, tell me your chapter. How did you make a hard thing turn toward hope, or where are you stuck? And what would a kind stranger on a bridge need to say for you to keep going? Your story matters here, and the next decision you make might be the one that turns the wheel hard. Doesn't mean hopeless, not for me, not for you, not today.